Hey guys, thanks for joining me. And if you like what you see, please subscribe.
Hello, peoples. Welcome to Sharp Ends. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite knife steels, 14C28N, how it compares to some of the other steels, and why I often say things like, for under $100, it's probably the best knife steel you can get, which is a little bit of opinion, but also can be backed up by some facts, which I'm going to give you today. First, I'd like to ask you to smash that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Comments really help the channel. And thank you, as always, to my Patreon supporters. You guys are the best. And I'll be giving you guys a knife of the month very soon. So, 14C28N. What is it? Well, it's made by Sandvik, which is a Swiss company. They make other well-known knife steels as well. But this one is the one that most people are going to know. If you look at the composition of this, the 14C means 14% chromium. That is just under the wire to make it stainless. It is definitely stainless. Now, it's missing a lot of the metallic type elements in it. Instead, it has silicon, phosphorus, and sulfur, but they're used in such a way to make them to give the I'll explain more, but the granularity, the toughness, the sharpness, and everything like that, it does something really interesting for it. I would like to just throw in here that although I know a layman's amount of knife steel stuff, I am not an expert, and a lot of the information I'm about to talk to you about are things that I learned from Knife Steel Composition app, which is on Google Play, and free. I suggest everyone should have that if they have. If they like knives at all, you just put in the knife steel that you're interested about. It'll give you a short blurb and its composition. Very, very cool little free app. Also, Knife Know-It-Alls. Knife Know-It-All is a great website that I go to as well for this information, as well as Laren Thomas Knife Steel Nerds. So just saying there that, yes, I have definitely read my sources, but I could certainly get it wrong. I am not an expert. So moving on, its properties. It's made by Sandvik. It's easily forged, cut, and sharpened. It has better corrosion resistance and is relatively low carbon and chromium packages would suggest. What I mean by that is that it's overall, sometimes these, if you look at just the composition of a knife steel and you're like, wow, that's a low percent of this or that or whatever, it has no vanadium, why does it work so well? The different elements in the knife work together to define its granularity, and whether or not it's ingot formed or it's powder metallurgy, there's lots of different things that go into there that affect its sharpness, stability, edge retention, all those things. And at first glance, you can't just make a summary judgment about a knife steel. 14C28N is a relatively cheap knife steel, but it does some things really, really, really well. You've probably heard me tell you about HRC before, which is hardness, like how hard the range is. And knife steels in general are anywhere in the mid 50s up to the 70s, depending on what it is. And the higher the hardness, the harder it is to sharpen, but also usually the longer the knife will stay sharp. So when it finally does go dull, it can be really hard to sharpen a knife with a high HRC of like 67 or 68 if you don't have the right equipment. Conversely, something with a lower hardness like 58 is going to be super easy to sharpen, but will go dull much faster. Now, that's not always true. There are exceptions to that rule depending on the composition of the steel. 14C28N has a wide rangeness of hardness. It can go all the way down from 55 up to, like, I don't know, 64, which gives it a lot of different potentials. At around 62, it could be a really good kitchen knife. Lower, it could be a good pocket knife steel. But even though that is all true, it actually stays sharper longer than you would ever expect it to, regardless of its HRC. And I found that people have found that because of the Kartra tests that they've done, as well as just my personal experience. I found that it stays sharp for a very long time, and all I need to do is usually just strop it up, and it works really well. And that's it. I just drop it a few times and it comes out super sharp again. And when I have sharpened it up, because it's the nitrogen steel and because of its granularity, it actually takes a very nice mirror edge, which can stay sharp for a very long time. Its toughness is also very high. You can use this in fixed blades and baton with it. The Morok Niv Garberg is made of 14C28N, and I have batoned the crap out of that. Of course, it has a Scandi grind, kind of made for that, but it will not chip. It is very, very tough, and its wear resistance is pretty good. It's not the best out there. If you spend a little bit more money, you're gonna find things with a lot better wear resistance. But even so, because of its combination of other trace elements, its granularity actually works out pretty good, and it ends up being able to be wear resistant pretty well. Now, because it's using nitrogen to yield a higher hardness, it does retain some high corrosion resistance compared to other stainless steels that might have carbon and chromium. This knife steel has very, very little carbon, so it's not a high carbon steel at all. It does the surface ossification that is okay on this. It's just underneath the threshold of, or just over the threshold of being a stainless steel. So it does. I found I've never had any patina issues, honestly, with this knife steel. So, people say that it's less corrosion resistant than S30V and other things that are in the same range, like AEBL, Nitro V. It just seems to perform really well for me. I've never had one of those knives rust up before. In comparison to D2, D2 is going to stay sharper for about 20% longer, according to some tests that I've read. But its advantage over D2 is that it provides a lot more corrosion resistance. And it's a lot less brittle than D2 because of it substitutes nitrogen for carbon. So, this is all, of course, is affected by blade geometry and by the cut of the knife and how it's sharpened and how it's heat treated. But in general, what I just said is true. It is definitely cheaper. It is definitely more corrosion resistance, and it's a lot less brittle than D2. I do like D2. I think D2 has its place, and D2 will stay sharper longer than 14C28N. It is a good steel, I think. It's just an old steel, but it definitely still has its place. The example I'm using for D2, by the way, is the Sencut Serene, which is made out of D2, and I absolutely love this little knife. I love the sound it makes. I love the button lock. It's just a great little, or plunge lock. It's just a great little knife. So don't necessarily turn up your nose to D2 under $50. I'd say like $50 or less, D2, great steel. If you're going to be spending $50 or more, in general, I'd say you need to go for 14C28N. And when we compare it to S30V, S30V's got it beat in every single category: abrasion, toughness, sharpness, all the things. Corrosion resistance. S30V is a good knife steel. A lot of people don't necessarily, think it's outmoded or whatever. And maybe it is, but it fills a niche and it's still a good knife steel. However, it is more expensive. For S30V, the cheapest one you could possibly find is probably going to be a little bit over $100, up to $200. This example right here is the Spyderco. I'm blanking on this one. Starts with an M, I think. But this guy is a great knife. S30V is very good, but it's going to cost more. 14C28N is very close to S30V in all of the things, but S30V is better. But it will cost you an extra $50 to $100 to have it. So, does 14C28N have a niche? Yes, it does. And that is in the under $100 range, unless it's something like a fixed blade, in which case you're using more stock metal for it. But the Garberg is $80 from Morok Niv, and is a great little fixed blade. So next, I have two other knives up here that I want to talk about, or steels I want to talk about: Nitro V and AEBL, which are basically very close to 14C28N. Nitro V, all three of these knives are nitrogen knives that replace most of the carbon with nitrogen, which gives it a finer granularity, and makes it so that it has a nice. You can put a very high mirror polish finish on it, and then the edge stability and will be excellent, and it's not brittle and it won't break. Nitro V has a touch of vanadium. By that I mean it's like 0.8%, very little. The only thing that Nitro V really does differently than 14C28N is it gives it a little bit more edge stability, but overall, I don't think that it's that different. And in general, you're going to pay more for Nitro V. It is going to be slightly more corrosive resistant. But overall, I don't see the advantage of it, except for you're going to pay a little bit more. Having said that, a lot of custom makers, small makers, use Nitro V, and I don't mind it, and I like Nitro V. Don't get me wrong. But in general, I don't know if it's necessarily worth it. I'll also say that in my experience, 14C28N has longer edge retention than Nitro V. However, Nitro V sharpens up nicely, has a lot of the same advantages as 14C28N, and I don't think it's bad. It has most of the same properties, except for it might not stay sharp as long, but it might have a little bit more corrosion resistance. So very, very, very close. If you look at the comparison charts, you can hardly tell a difference. It has a little bit less chromium too. That's one of the main reasons why it doesn't stay sharp quite as long. And then finally, let's talk about the difference between it and AEBL. AEBL and it are almost the exact same as well. But AEBL was originally manufactured as a steel for razor blades and scalpels, and it's still used for that. It basically, if you look at the compositions between them, are almost the same. I look at AEBL though. Usually, I will find those in, especially LT Wright uses them a lot, and that's why I have this Forester, or no, this is the Northern Hunter here. They're using AEBL. You can tell because it says L there. For all practical purposes, AEBL, I haven't necessarily noticed much of a difference between 14C and 28N. From what I've read, it's a little bit less corrosion resistance and its edge retention is a little bit less, but it's supposed to be a little bit more tough. And I think that's why companies like LT Wright use it in their fixed blades, is because it's just slightly more tough. This happens to be the Northern Hunter, Northern Canadian, from AEBL, from LT Wright. Very cool little knife. And if I didn't say so before, this Nitro V knife with representative is the Hawk from Very Good Knife Company. So overall, what do I think about 14C28N? I think that 14C28N, Nitro V, and AEBL very close together. S30V is just a step ahead of it, but also costs a little bit more, and it's definitely a clear upgrade to D2. And then as far as other type, what do you call it, budget steels go, I think that, like I said, for under $80, even under $100, I think that if you can get any three of these knife steels, which are basically very close to the same composition, that it's always going to beat almost everything else. Unless for some reason you're able to find something with the same profile and the same price point like S30V, but I don't think you're going to find S30V for that much. And I have left out a bunch of knife steels, obviously. I'm just talking about this itself and why I like it so much. So what are some of the knives that I would recommend in the budget territory? This Kyrex from Miguron uses 14C28N, and I think that any knife that you get from Miguron that's made out of 14C28N is going to be a good knife in general. So I would say right there, Miguron, great budget knives for $50, and usually a milled clip, titanium clip, ergodynamics and the lockup, everything. Great, great company to go to for this. They're just killing it with this steel. They're really good. And then, of course, like I said, for fixed blades, the Garberg, great example of an awesome little fixed blade by Mora, that Morocnev, that is just amazing. And I believe that right now they're about $80. Comes with a little plastic sheath and a giant upgrade over their $16 companion or robust. Although the companion robust for $16 is just a high carbon steel, but you can't beat that. You can't beat that price point either. I mean, they're just awesome knives as well. All right, so that's my love letter to 14C28N. I hope that hasn't been too boring for you and that you've kept along. Again, thank you so much to Knife Steel Nerds, Laren Thomas. Thank you to the Knife Steel Composition app. I love you guys. And again, thank you to which I used the article a lot about from Knife Know It All, and Travis. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for letting me ramble on and on about this knife steel. I love it. Maybe I'll do more of this if you guys like it. So like, subscribe, leave a comment. Comments really help the channel. Become a Patreon member and help support this channel. $3 a month down below. You too can help support this content and win a knife. Get a chance to win a knife every single month. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time on Sharp Ends. Bye-bye now.